Today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the different types of errors. So which one is considered worse? And the answer is not simple, but we're going to look at which one is considered worse. And then we're going to go into detail on the steps and logic of hypothesis testing, so that way you know what you need to do first, second, and third, etc. So let's try and figure out which type of error is worse, type 1 or type 2. There's two things that you need to consider. And the first one is the impact that the error will have to the field itself. So if we're talking about psychology, what impact would type 1 errors have in the field of psychology, and what type of impact would type 2 errors have? Well, in order to understand this, you have to understand that the type of error that is most likely to get published is a type 1 error. So why is that? Why are we more likely to see type 1 errors than type 2 errors in the published literature? And that has to do with the journals themselves. See, journal editors don't like to publish studies where only non-significant findings were obtained. So if I send in a paper, I want to get published, but all I have are non-significant results, then the journal or editor is going to say, no, we're not interested in that because all you're demonstrating is sampling error. And so journal editors are going to be looking for significant findings. Now, what does it mean when something is significant? It means that either you've made a correct decision and there really is something there. Remember, sampling error plus something else. So really there is something there, or you might be making a type 1 error. A type 1 error, as we've just covered, is when you say that something is significant, you're saying that there's a treatment effect, when in reality, all you have is sampling error. So again, journals are going to be accepting papers with significant results, and that means that they're accepting papers that either have truly identified a treatment effect, or, and we won't know, but maybe it's a type 1 error. The researcher actually didn't find something. They actually only have sampling error. So you see then why in published literature, if you're going to find any type of error, it's going to be a type 1 error. Type 2 errors can only occur, they only have a chance of occurring for non-significant results, and non-significant results don't tend to be published. All right, so why then is this going to impact the field? Well, if we're publishing studies and some of those are type 1 errors, or they have within them type 1 errors, that can affect the field because other labs are going to be reading your paper and they may be developing a whole line of research based on your findings. And so they may use their grant money. They may use public funds. I mean, they may spend years following up on your results. And they're not realizing, nor are you, that what they were actually following up on was a type 1 error. All right, so maybe they were on the right track. Maybe you're on the right track. And in fact, there were real treatment effects, and in which case, other researchers should be following up on those results. But what if what you published was a type 1 error? Then you could be sending a lot of research labs, on the totally wrong path, and a lot of resources, money, and human power could have been expended before realizing, oops, this was actually a type 1 error. All right, so that's the impact to the field. We're more likely to be impacted by type 1 errors. Now, what about if we look at the consequences for your particular study? So let's say that you are doing an experiment and you're comparing a placebo against a drug that you think might be a cure for COVID. And let's pretend that you find significant results. Right? So that means you think you have found a cure, but in reality, you don't. So that would be a type 1 error, right? Thinking you have a cure, but in reality, it's just sampling error. So what would be the consequences of that? Well, aside from letting everybody's hopes and dreams come crashing down, it's possible that people took the drug and it had no effect. And in fact, it didn't prevent them. It didn't cure COVID. All right. And so certainly that would be a negative consequence. We wouldn't want to give somebody a drug that's useless. Now let's look at what the effect of a type 2 error would have in your particular study. So a type 2 error occurs when you are researching this drug and you think that the drug does nothing. And that's because of what your statistics are telling you, right? Your statistics are saying that you don't have a significant effect. All you have is sampling error. But if it's a type 2 error, what that means is you actually did have something, but you missed it. So I don't know about you, but I think that would be a more serious error, right? You thinking that, oh, there's nothing there, I'm going to give up, this was the wrong drug. In reality, you missed the effect for, I don't know, whatever reason, but you actually just missed finding the cure for COVID. All right. So in these two examples, here I've highlighted that type 1 errors are more impactful to the field because these are the type of errors that tend to get published. But over here, for this specific situation, probably a type 2 error would be more serious. And so what you really have to do is balance, both considerations and decide for yourself based on your specific study and what gets published. You have to come to a conclusion of, what gets, which one is worse. Now, a question I'm often asked is, well, how do we know that we're making a type 1 error? How do we know that we're making a type 2 error? And the short answer is, for any specific study, we don't know. But what we can do is, if we've got a bunch of people, not just ourselves, but other labs from other countries, and they're trying to replicate our particular finding, let's say we do a finding that turns out to be significant. So we're not sure if this is really a treatment effect or a type 1 error. Well, let's say we have 50 different labs and they all find the same significant result, then that makes it far less likely that all 50 labs happen to find a type 1 error, right? Or happen to make a type 1 error. So if 50 labs are coming up with the same answer, that yes, you found a cure for COVID, well, then you can be fairly certain that you didn't make a type 1 error. Similarly, if those 50 labs try to replicate your results and very, very few of them can, then that suggests that, well, maybe you did find or you did make a type 1 error. There's actually nothing there, right? Because other people couldn't replicate it. Same thing down here. If, let's say, you don't find significant results, well, maybe it's because there's nothing there, or maybe it's because you've made a type 2 error. Now, you might think that what researchers do is when they get non-significant results, they just give up. And that's actually far from the truth. All right, what we're likely to do is reassess the way we did our experiment or our study and look for any weaknesses that we might have missed the first time, and then we repeat the study. And so if we do that 10 times and we keep getting non-significant results, then we can be pretty certain that there really is nothing there, that we're not making a type 2 error. If, on the other hand, we tweak our study, our experiment, and we redo it, if it was a type 2 error, then these future experiments that we're doing should then be significant, right? Because a type 2 error means you missed it. So with subsequent studies that you've improved upon, you should be getting significant results now. All right, so hopefully that helps.